There are only 2 questions in your ITEC theory paper about the urinary system. And ITEC wants you to understand what the urinary system consists of, like the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder and the urethra. And the function of the urinary system being the removal of waste products from the blood. About 1/5 of the blood that passes through the kidneys is actually filtrated and then leaves the body as urine. So we need to understand how the kidneys work, how the ureters work, what the bladder does, and how the urine leaves the body through the urethra. The functions of the kidneys is waste disposal, to get rid of the waste in the blood. As the blood passes through the kidneys, it filters about 1/5 of the blood. The kidneys take the salts and water from the blood and absorb it and reabsorb it through the kidneys. So the job of the kidneys is to regulate the amount of water we have in the body and the amount of salts, mineral salts we have in the body as well. So the regulation of water levels and salt levels in the body is done through the kidneys. As that 1/5 of our blood is filtered through the kidneys produce urine. And urine is all the excess water and excess salts that the body doesn't need. Most of us have 2 kidneys. Occasionally though, some people have been found to have 1 kidney and some people have been found to have 3, but that's quite unusual and no 2 bodies are the same. So most of us have 2 bean-shaped kidneys about 11 centimetres long that are found at the back of the body, sitting behind the liver, just either side of the spine. 25% of our blood passes through the kidneys at any one time to have its toxins and waste products removed from it. The kidney consists of 2 parts. The outside layer of the kidney is known as the cortex. The inside or middle layer of the kidney is the medulla. We also have a funnel coming from the kidneys called the renal pelvis. The hilum is the point of entry for the blood, the lymphatic vessels, the nerves and the ureters. So anything that enters the kidney is known as being the point of the hilum. The function of the kidney overall is to filter the waste products and toxins from the blood and to reabsorb into the body any excess water and salts that we may need, but also to get rid of the waste that we don't need and form urine. This is an overview picture of a kidney, and as we can see, the 2 vessels that go in and out of the kidney are known as the renal artery and the renal vein. Blood, waste and water enter the kidney through the renal artery, and from the renal vein, which is the blue vessel, this is where blood that has been filtered from the kidney leaves the kidney deoxygenated and goes back to the heart to be replenished with oxygen. Excess water and toxic waste in the form of urine leave via the ureter, and we can see there the pink tube, the same colour as the kidney, going down the length of the kidney is the ureter, and that's going to have collected the urine that we don't need, which needs to be excreted from the body. So the arteries and veins, the blood vessels that feed the kidney, are the renal blood vessels. The renal artery takes oxygenated blood into the kidney and is filtered by the kidney, and the cells of the kidney then give off their deoxygenated blood with carbon dioxide, and that leaves the kidney via the renal vein. The ureters are 2 tubes that connect the kidneys to the bladder. We have 2 ureters and 1 urethra. The ureters are 12 inches long, 10 to 12 inches long, and they pass urine from the kidneys to the bladder. Urine stimulates the mechanical contraction to move fluid forward. So it automatically happens that urine passes down the ureters into the bladder. And this stimulates our feeling then that we want to empty the bladder. The renal pelvis is a structure very similar to a funnel. And this collects urine from the medulla, the middle part of the kidney, and takes it to the ureter. Along the way, the urine is collected in what we call renal pyramids, and it's the renal pyramids that have collecting ducts within them. The collecting ducts pass the urine into the renal calyces, then into the renal pelvis, which is our funnel, and then down into the ureter. The bladder is a sac-like organ in the pelvic cavity. Its function is to act as a reservoir for urine. It feels sometimes as though the amount of urine in the bladder is enormous, but actually the collection of 200 ml of urine will stimulate the walls of the urine to contract, relax the sphincter, and empty the urine into the urethra. So in fact only 200 ml is necessary for us to actually start feeling as though we need to empty our bladder. So it's really not very much. We have one urethra, and urethra is a structure which is a narrow tube that passes from the bladder to the outside of the body. This is voluntarily controlled. We have an external sphincter, so that although the bladder might give us the feeling of fullness and needing to empty the bladder, it is a voluntary sphincter that allows us to relax and empty the bladder. This urethra is shorter in women. It's only 4 centimetres in women, whereas it's 20 centimetres in men. And in men, it acts as part of the male sexual reproductive organs as well. So the urethra in a man is also a passage for semen. So in a man, the urethra has 2 functions: to take urine out of the body and also to act as a passage for semen. And this is quite often one of the questions that ITEC might ask you. So the urethra is a passage that takes urine from the bladder to the outside of the body. It's shorter in women, longer in men, and in men the function is not only to take urine out of the body but also to act as a passageway for semen. The kidney is made up of lots of cells called nephrons. There's over 1 million nephrons within each kidney, and the job of the kidney is to act as a filter, a filtration unit for the blood. Now, there are 3 stages of filtration and urine production. And in stage 1, you have the filtration in the Bowman's capsule. In stage 2, you have reabsorption of water and salts in the convoluted tubules. And in stage 3, you have the collection in the collecting ducts of the urine and into the pelvic calyces. So there are 3 parts of urine production and filtration. That's the filtration in the Bowman's capsule, the reabsorption, and the collection. So over 1 million filtration units in the kidneys, in each kidney, and they are known as nephrons. The first stage of filtering the blood involves the afferent arterioles. These are the blood vessels that arrive in the nephron. Now, within the nephron, after the afferent arteriole arrives in the nephron, it curls up into a knot, and this knot is known as the glomerulus. The glomerulus sits in a capsule known as the Bowman's capsule. So afferent arterioles turn into the glomerulus in a sort of knotted collection of blood vessels, and as they travel, the blood travels through the glomerulus, through this knot. It leaves the Bowman's capsule as an efferent arteriole. So an afferent arteriole arrives, an efferent arteriole exits. So the two E's and the two A's. Afferent and arrive go into the glomerulus, and efferent and exit leave the glomerulus. So these arterioles take the blood into the nephron. They then form a knot or mesh, tangled mesh of vessels, which is known as the glomerulus. Now the glomerulus has a much more porous wall to the blood vessels, and through this porous wall passes the water and salty substances from the blood through the capillary wall into the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule then collects these products, these waste products, the salts and the excess water, and passes it down through the nephron. Now, at this moment in time, this filtrate, which it's called, is water, glucose, salts, ions, all sorts of different electrolytes that we need in our body, but sometimes we have too much. And this is the job of the kidney, the nephron within the kidney, to filter the blood and take out any excess water, excess glucose, salts, ions that we have in the body that's too much, to get rid of them. The second stage of filtration in the kidneys is reabsorption. And as the filtered contents comes down from the Bowman's capsule, the filtered substances pass into the proximal convoluted tubule. Now this sounds complicated, but actually proximal means that it's the nearest to the Bowman's capsule. Distal means it's furthest away. Convoluted just means that it's curvy. The proximal convoluted tubule is a curvy, wavy tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule then straightens out into what is known as the loop of Henle, and this is a very straight loop, and the contents then, these substances, pass through the loop of Henle and then into what is known as the distal convoluted tubule, which again is a distal, wavy or curvy tubule. Now just to recap, we're coming with these filtrates. Now these are known as filtrates at the moment. They're water and they're salt substances, and they've passed from the Bowman's capsule through the proximal convoluted tubule, which then straightens out into the loop of Henle and then up into the distal convoluted tubule. Now, in the tubules, reabsorption of water, glucose, salts and ions takes place. About 1% of the filtered fluid that passes through the Bowman's capsule is excreted as urine. The rest of it is reabsorbed, so not a lot really. So 1% of the fluid filtered by the Bowman's capsule is actually excreted as urine. The rest is reabsorbed because the body needs it. So that percentage might well be one of the questions that you could get in your exam paper, so it's worth noting. The third stage, or collection stage, of filtration is when the fluid passes into collecting tubules. Now we've gone through the loop of Henle up into the convoluted distal tubules, and now we've been depositing the filtration into collecting tubules in the medulla. Now from the medulla, these collecting tubules then enter the pyramids, which are in the renal pelvis. The collected waste is funneled through the renal pelvis into the ureter. And as we said before, we have two ureters that connect the kidneys to the bladder.
The job of the urinary system is also to keep a balance in the body, to make sure that any ions that are cleansed and filtered through the kidneys are secreted so that they can be passed through the body in urine. The micturition is the proper name of having a pee or urinating. So that's micturition. And the other job of the kidneys and the urinary system is to keep a balance of electrolytes. Electrolytes are the balance of chemicals like sodium and potassium, calcium, and sometimes we can drink far too much water. I remember Anthony Andrews, the actor from Brideshead Revisited, had drunk so much water during a stage play that he collapsed and almost died because he had upset the balance of the electrolytes in the body so badly. So the urinary system is also about keeping that balance of electrolytes in the body.
Urine is made up of 96% water, 2% of urine, and 2% are other minerals like ammonia, sodium, potassium. On the right hand side of this slide you can see the different colours of urine, and it'd be interesting to know what colour your urine is. I don't think any of us would think that the top one was actually normal. I think most of us would think the second one was maybe normal. So the darker your urine is, the more water you need to drink to balance the body. Salts are excreted in the urine to maintain the balance in the body, and the colour, the yellow colour, comes from bilirubin. Normally our urine is a little acidic. We produce about 1.5 litres a day. That's often a question in the ITEC exam paper. So is what percentage of water would we find in urine? It increases when we drink more, and when it's cold, and when we're stressed, so we produce more urine then. Decreases when we're sweating a lot, because if we're sweating a lot of our fluid out of our body, we have less to get rid of in urine. And if we're dehydrated and we're drinking less, then we'll decrease the amount of urine we produce as well. In order to get rid of waste in the body, we need to drink at least 0.5 litres of water per day for waste disposal. And again, that's another question in the ITEC syllabus, is how many litres of water per day do we need for waste disposal? And it's 0.5 litres. Osmosis and the urinary system. The endocrine system produces a hormone called antidiuretic hormone. Used to be known as vasopressin and is sometimes written as ADH. The diffusion of water through a semi-permeable membrane is known as osmosis. And ADH helps the reabsorption of water in the body. So antidiuretic hormone stops the water being lost in urine. So a diuretic your doctor might prescribe for you. A diuretic will increase the amount of urine production. An antidiuretic hormone in the body will stop the amount of urine production. Sometimes our antidiuretic hormones are working overtime and we have too much produced and we end up with fluid retention. So an antidiuretic hormone stops the production of urine and the loss of water in the body and helps to have it reabsorbed in the kidneys. We're now going to talk about the diseases and disorders of the urinary system, and one of the most common inflammations of the bladder is known as cystitis. Quite often referred to as peeing razor blades. It's a really uncomfortable and extremely painful condition of the bladder, which I have only ever had once, but it was really quite uncomfortable. So cystitis is inflammation of a bladder, can be caused by infections, very common in women because we have a shorter urethra. It can often be an extreme allergic reaction. I think I had cystitis because of eating raspberries, and raspberries is known to produce a really nasty variation of cystitis. So cystitis, inflammation of the bladder, more often in women because of our shorter urethra. Diabetes insipidus is a condition characterized by excessive thirst and excretion of large amounts of severely diluted urine. It's very, very rare, diabetes insipidus, but it does come up in our exam paper quite regularly. Cancer can affect the ureter, the bladder, the renal pelvis, and the kidney. So any part of the kidney you can suffer from a cancer. Glomerulonephritis is inflammation of the filtering units of the kidney, the glomeruli, and is often related to an autoimmune disorder. So say that after me: glomerulonephritis. This is often one of the questions in the ITEC examination paper. Dysuria is painful urination. Enuresis is another name for bedwetting. Incontinence is the inability to control the reflex of emptying the bladder. So you don't have any control over when it empties and you wet yourself. Nephroblastoma is the name given to cancer of the kidneys in infancy, and the picture on the top right of the slide is an example of nephroblastoma. Renal failure is the name given to failure where the kidneys fail to function adequately. Renal, kidney failure, renal failure. Renal colic is the name given to intermittent pain that comes from the kidneys. Uremia is an excess of urea in the blood. You can see that the bottom right picture is a picture of what happens to the kidneys when they fail to work properly. Just to recap then, the urinary system is also known as the renal system. So when you see or hear anything to do with renal, that's to do with the kidneys. The Latin for kidney is nephra, and inflammation of the kidney then is nephritis. The other name for nephritis is also known as Bright's disease. A kidney stone is where there is a kidney, a solid stone within the kidney that then causes a lot of pain when it moves from the renal pelvis into the bladder or to the ureters. It can be blasted with laser treatment to break it down, but quite often it needs to be removed with surgery. One of the things that ITEC like you to consider in every system is how it relates to any other system in the body, and obviously the urinary system and the circulatory system work very closely together to purify the blood. The endocrine system produces a lot of hormones, particularly renin, which regulates blood pressure, and obviously antidiuretic hormone, which helps to hang on to excess fluid in the body. The skeletal system is stimulated by the kidneys and by the urinary system to produce bone marrow. And the skin also helps the urinary system by removing waste through the skin.